Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining for episode 9. Feels crazy to say that, of our Grow the Game Summer Zoom series. We have a great guest today, someone that I've known about and known for a long time. He's been longtime friends with my dad, so I'm very excited to have him on. Tremendous coach, tremendous father, and 2-time NBA champ. So in that order. So we're very excited to have Coach Forcier on. I'll introduce him and then kind of give him the floor to introduce himself. If anything that I've missed, we'll get into that. And then we all, as always, we do audience questions. I have my questions, and we always give Coach the floor. So Coach Forcier, I'm attended Seattle Pacific University, where at the same time he was interning for the Supersonics. Correct, Coach?
That's correct, Adam.
For the great Hall of Fame George Karl, one of the few coaches to have over 1,000 wins. So pretty cool to start his basketball career, coaching career under Coach Karl. Then was also a varsity assistant and JV coach at Lake Washington. As a son of a high school coach, that's always been pretty cool to me. And then college assistant first, before getting back into the NBA with the Pistons, the Indiana Pacers, where he worked for Rick Carlisle. Assistant with the Spurs, where he won an NBA championship in 2014 under Coach Popovich. And that's one thing you'll notice. It's Hall of Famers after Hall of Famers that coaches worked for and coached and played with. So after the Spurs, he was with the Orlando Magic and the Memphis Grizzlies before going back with the Spurs Mafia under Coach Budenholzer in Milwaukee, where they won a championship in 2021. So, Coach, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for being such a great mentor to so many of us, and can't wait for today's session.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm humbled to be in a position that, you know, those of you that are here today, think I'm someone that could, you could learn from. I don't see myself that way, but again, I'm humbled, and I hope that that the time we spend together today bears some fruit for any of you.
Definitely. My first question for you, Coach, is you're somebody that we have a lot of guests that go from NBA to college or college to NBA. For example, we had Dwayne Killings on last week, and he worked for Coach Biggerstaff, who you spent time with as well, and then with the Bobcats, and then went to college. And you kind of spent time with the NBA, high school, college. What was kind of your transition and mission early on? Did you have a preference on which level you wanted to coach at?
Yeah, well, when I started this whole, this whole odyssey, I knew as a high school graduate, like before I literally, turned the tassel on my cap and gown as a senior in high school, I knew I wanted to be a high school coach. And in those days, from what I had known in my time, most the high school coaches had to be high school teachers. There wasn't a lot of guys that had a chance to be high school coaches, but had day jobs doing something else. It was almost a requirement that you needed to be a teacher in the building. Unfortunately, I didn't really want to be a high school teacher. I really just wanted to be a high school coach, but I went to college and starting out as a freshman in college, I figured I was going to, have to find my way into being a high school history or, whatever, some kind of a teacher like that, in order to be able to get to the gym at 3:00 and coach. So that's how this whole thing started out. I loved basketball, and that's what I thought I was going to do. I'd never been exposed in my, era. I'd never been exposed to the idea of, you could become a college coach and have a career and pay for a mortgage and send your kids to private school, or, have a couple car payments or whatever it is, the things you do, buy groceries. I never realized that I could have a career, as a college coach, to pay the bills. And the idea of becoming a professional coach would have never, for any reason under the sun, entered my mind. It's just a different place in time, just in society in general. So things evolve and things take a funny course. And here I am a long time later.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know it's a little different. We have GAs on this call. We have managers. We have NBA assistants. We have NBA assistants. We have G League assistants. We have people of all kinds on this call just right now. And I know it's a little different. Me being a GA, somebody being a manager, you being in college working for the Supersonics. But talk about kind of your impressionable stage working for Hall of Fame or working in the NBA as intern, staffer, whatever, learning your way and kind of what that experience was like for you.
Well, when I started, it was at a point in time where first I got a lucky break, and I'm sure there's lots of us on this call today that have gotten lucky breaks, and maybe we've gotten more than one lucky break. And And there's also, I'm sure people on the call that are hoping they get a lucky break. But it's a great place to start the conversation, because undoubtedly, a lucky break is what it takes for all of us. I don't care who you are. It takes a lucky break, and it takes lucky breaks over and over again along the way, if you really hope to propel your career as far and as long as it can go. So this whole story for me anyway, began that way. But I started off and I had 5 years in Seattle with George Karl, as a really young kid. And, at that point in time, in modern terms, I was an intern. At that moment in time, I wasn't called an intern. It wasn't known as an internship. There weren't internships, so it wasn't recognized as that. I was just, someone they pulled off the street, essentially just to help, rebound the ball, pass the ball, set some screens, play some defense on NBA players. And, which of course is a joke, but that's really what I was doing. And they were paying me an hourly, wage to do it. And, it was like my other friends in college were, making $6 an hour to flip hamburgers or, work at the car wash, to pay for college. And I happened to be working in the NBA. So it's kind of a crazy story like that. But along the way, you get exposed to a bunch of people and you have different experiences, and you come to find out that, people around you see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And you come to have your eyes open to some things that you'd never seen before. And people introduce you to ideas that you could have never thought before. And things start to take different twists and turns. So really between then and now, as you've already mentioned, Adam, I got to spend 3 years as a high school coach. I got to spend 4 years as a Division I college coach. And of course, I just finished 26 years now in the NBA. So it's been a long road. A lot of diverse experiences, and every stop of the way has had great value in terms of learning and growth and things that you appreciate at all the various stops and all the various levels.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And talk about your transition. What made you want to go from graduating college, high school coach, and then getting to college? Did you always want to be in the NBA and college was just what presented itself? Or talk about working in college and then getting back into the NBA after that?
Yeah. So to try not to belabor the answer here, I told you, going into college, I just wanted to be a high school coach. And then when I had my opportunity to start out with the Sonics, over the course of time, with the Sonics and in a ground level, type of position, I came to discover that I could potentially become a college coach. And that had never crossed my mind. And as I said, I found out that I could have a potential avenue into that and make a career out of it, make a full-time living, being a coach. And so I set my sights on that, because then at that point in time, it still never even entered my mind. Like there were no examples like any of you guys that might see something about yourself in me or in my story. I didn't have that in my time. There was nobody I could look to be like, oh, he's doing that, I could do that too. I didn't see him. It just didn't exist. I mean, we're talking about the early 90s. So, times have really changed. And so the idea of becoming an NBA assistant basketball coach, or even, a head coach, I would have had to be, on a heavy acid trip to even think about that, And so I decided that, college was going to be something I wanted to pursue. And I really did have my sights set on trying to not only have a career in college for the rest of my life, but hopefully, work to a place of becoming a college head coach. And so when I embarked on that, which ended up being a 4-year window of my life at 2 universities, I was all in. And that was the only thought I had, was trying to be successful doing that. But the twists of fate are interesting how they go. And sometimes we're lucky enough to get to choose life, and sometimes life chooses us. And college coaching, and those experiences, did not prove to be where I guess I was meant to be, or it wasn't going to be my path. And somehow I got another opportunity, in the NBA. The door opened, and fortunately it stayed open now for the last, whatever, I'm not going to do the math, but it's been a long time.
Coach, you look 29, so it's fine. Going with Coach Carl out of the Pistons, that was kind of your first entryway back into the NBA, correct?
Yeah, that's actually when I became an actual NBA assistant coach for the first time, because my 5 years with the Sonics, I had started, literally at the most, entry level, humble beginnings you could get in at, and over the course of 5 years, ultimately became, from a title standpoint, which I'm not really a titles guy, but just to give you guys a reference point, like a special assistant. So I was on the court doing a ton of things, but I was not, of course, an assistant coach, and had gotten a lot of experience. But by the time, Adam, to your point, when Rick Carlisle hired me in Indiana, after my 4 years as a college coach, I was hired as an assistant coach at that point.
Yeah. And there's a great quote from the article you sent me probably a year ago, kind of about working on that entry level with Coach Carlisle, because it was his first time being a head coach, if I'm not mistaken. And so taking over with him, following him to Indiana, and the quote is, "I tried to be a sponge. I kept my mouth shut." And it's great. It's great because as a GA, as a manager, so many of us, we just are kind of flies on the wall, and sometimes we're not even flies on the wall. We're outside trying to hear what's inside the room. So talk about kind of being in a huge position of influence in that organization, in that coaching room, and that coaching staff, in that locker room, but also being observant and really learning each day under Coach Carlisle in that group.
Yeah, I mean, I may have been an assistant coach, but I certainly, didn't have influence. I didn't have any significance there. I was low man on the totem pole, and thrilled to have the opportunity, and proud of the opportunity, but I also knew my place, and, to come in and be working with, veteran coaches and coaches that had a whole lot of different, experience levels, of course, than I did, whether they'd been longtime NBA assistant coaches, whether they'd been multiple time college head coaches at a major level, whatever it was, whether they were, former NBA players who were coaches. I certainly knew my place. And I think that it's important for any of us. One of the most significant, attributes that I believe in is to have, significant humility. And you have to be able to have ambition and confidence, but those things can never outweigh the amount of humility you have. And if you don't have humility and you get perceived as being arrogant, or just too ambitious or aggressive for your place in time, it can really hurt you. And so to try to find that balance is critical for all of us, as we move along and pursue the things that we, might dream of.
Yeah. And hopefully it gives me permission. Mike Mannix is somebody that, well, in your time in Indiana, you met two people. Obviously, you met a ton of people, but you met my father when he was at IUPUI. And so my dad talks about that a lot. He really appreciates you guys' friendship. And then Coach Mannix texted me this morning earlier about how he met you at the same time, and you've been a great mentor to him. Talk about your time in Indiana and kind of how important it can be meeting somebody 15 years ago in coaching and building a relationship and a friendship, to where 15 years later, I'm my dad's son, and here you are on my Zoom series, and that's so cool and so important. But talk about kind of the importance of the relationships within the game of basketball and kind of maintaining those over time.
Well, that's a great question, Adam, and it could turn out to be the most important thing that you asked today. So I hope that everybody, at least tries to listen to my answer here, and hopefully it has some value. I imagine most of us have already come to understand the significance of relationships. And I imagine that a lot of us on this call have already, had experiences or benefited from relationships in terms of where you are, whether it's how you became a manager, a grad assistant, or an assistant in the G League, or whoever is in our audience today. But I know for sure that the strength and the quality of your relationship is the number one, factor in this business in terms of, hoping to have an opportunity to get into the kind of positions that you might aspire to. And, one of the things that's interesting is when you're at the front door of your career ambitions, it's just the nature of life. Everybody that you're looking at is older than you and more experienced than you and has been down the road and been around the block a few times. But what you may not realize is that your peers, I mean, people that are your same age, your fellow managers, your fellow GAs, people that may only be a year or two older or whatever, those are honestly can turn out to be the most significant relationships that you have. So one of my mottos that I say, and this is important, especially when you, like, if you don't recognize that the people that are to your left and your right can be every bit or more important to you than the people that are above you on the quote unquote ladder, so to speak. One of my phrases, and I use it in my family all the time, I use it with guys at work. Like, I'm not a bumper sticker guy, but if I was a bumper sticker guy, there's one bumper sticker I'd slap on my car. And it's kind of a motto for life, but that's, don't be an asshole. And hopefully none of you guys in this call today are assholes, but the reality is there's probably one or two assholes that are on this call, and the question is, like, are you an asshole? And do the people that are your peers right now, do they think you're an asshole? And so it's important to realize that if you disregard the people that are quote unquote on your level right now, that are your peers, that can prove to be costly. And a lot of times the people that you're with right now will be the ones that, as time evolves, become your most important friends in the business. You guys will grow up together, and everybody's going to get different breaks. Everybody's going to get different opportunities. And there's going to come a day, if you're fortunate enough to be in the industry, whatever level it is, if you're fortunate enough to be in the industry for a long time, wake up one day, you're going to be a little bit older. It might surprise you how old you are one day. And you're going to start realizing that people that are, I don't want to use the phrase beneath, because that's not what I mean, but people that are maybe younger, or who your initial relationship started at a different, place, are all of a sudden, having their careers go really well and getting opportunities that maybe you've never had. And so it's something to be mindful of.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great example, because Darvin Ham was by your side the last few years in Milwaukee. Now he's head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's an incredible example, because obviously you guys are very close, seeing your social media posts, and he seems like a great guy. So that's a great example of that. I mean,
well, before we skip off that, since you brought up Darvin, Adam. So yeah, to your point, Darvin and I are the same age, and we've been sitting here as assistant coaches together for a long time. Darvin loves to tell this story. I don't really tell this story, but Darvin loves to, and probably in the time we've been assistants together, he's probably told this story in front of me literally 100 times to different people. But he loves to tell a story how I, used to be one of his coaches. And so when he was an NBA player, and he was actually here playing for the Bucks, and I was here for a cup of tea a couple of times with George Karl, I did coach Darvin, and he thinks it's the greatest thing ever that all of a sudden here we are, being assistants with the Bucks, and we're winning championships together, and we're living in the bubble in Orlando, and all these crazy experiences. And he could never get enough of saying, like, hey, Chad used to work me out. Chad was my coach, and there's lots of things like that. But to finish the point, I've got a lot of guys that at one point were interns for me, in the NBA, that were coming out of college, and they're 22 years old, and they're just, getting out of college, and they're starting as interns. And, they're head coaches now. Will Hardy just got named the head coach of the Utah Jazz a week ago. Taylor Jenkins is the head coach of Memphis. He's been the head coach for 3 or 4 years already. And once upon a time, they were interns of mine in San Antonio. So there's lots of other stories, but that just, enhances my point.
yeah, no, it's a fantastic point. And I mean, just looking at the people you've worked with and for. I mean, it's Greg Popovich, who we'll get into, Coach Carlisle, Coach Carl, obviously Coach Budenholzer, but then it's also Gerg and it's Terry Stotts and it's Dwayne Casey and Coach Vogel and Coach Biggerstaff. Talk about, I mean, the NBA is so interconnected. Everybody knows everybody, and especially spending so much time that you spent with the Spurs, it's just a factory. And so talk about kind of the different levels of people you've learned from and grown with. And obviously you keep all those tentacles when you're still in Milwaukee.
Well, to have the benefit of retrospect now this far down the road in my career, as I've already alluded to, in terms of how important, the relationships are and how important it is to not be an asshole and how important it is to recognize that the people that are by your side are every bit as important as the people that you're looking up to. You never know in a given moment who you're surrounded by. And to your point, Adam, when I started in Seattle with the Sonics, Terry Stotts at that point in time, I didn't know who Terry Stotts was. Certainly, of course, Terry Stotts didn't know who I was. And, but at that point in time, he was the advanced scout for the Sonics. And you fast forward however many years it's been, and not only is Terry Stotts, one of the best coaches in our game, he's now been a 3-time head coach in the NBA. And, but in the initial, my early days with Terry, he was our advanced scout. And then once upon a time, Dwayne Casey rolls through the door. And again, fast forward all these years later, and Dwayne Casey's now been a 3-time head coach in the NBA. And both of them have done great work. But again, at that point in time, you have no idea who you're in the midst of. You don't know how their opportunities will unfold. How good they'll become, what and when their lucky breaks will come that'll propel them in a certain direction. So, I look back and there's a lot of names, that fill those descriptions. But to me, it points to the importance of being in the moment that you're in, not skipping the steps, not being in a hurry to get to your next stop or your next position, and pouring yourself into the people that you're sharing your experience with today. Building great relationships, learning from everybody, being respectful, being humble, and just appreciating, again, where you are now, who you're with, and always being mindful of, you don't know where life will go in 2 years, or in my case, 25 years.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, Coach, and great examples too. And you mentioned Will Hardy, and you mentioned Taylor Jenkins as well. When they were interns with you, what are some things that kind of set them apart? Because we have GAs and managers on this call, and so I always ask kind of the college coaches, the best GAs you've worked for, what did they do to separate themselves? Well, the interns you have are NBA head coaches, so what did they do to separate themselves? And when did you kind of know, okay, these kids can be pretty special?
Well, they're both really different. I think their stories are really different. And there's a lot of names that I could add to that list that were interns at one point that haven't become head coaches necessarily, but maybe they're assistant general managers now, or they're assistant coaches in the NBA, that for sure. And, Will's one of my best friends. And like I said, he was my intern, like basically my dedicated intern for 2 years in San Antonio. And Taylor and I actually started our first day with the Spurs was the same day I was coming into the Spurs. And at that point, I'd been an actual assistant coach in the NBA for 11 years already. And Taylor was fresh out of grad school and was literally starting his first day as an intern in the front office for RC Buford. So, different intersecting points in life and career. But when Taylor came in the door, he had finished grad school at the, Wharton at Penn and Wharton Business School. And he was on the front office side, with RC Buford. And at that point in time, his ambition was to move through, a front office type of a career. And along the way, he discovered that wasn't where his passion lied. And he made a lane change. and decided that he wanted to be in coaching, which was really abrupt. And it was surprising to, at the moment in time, it was surprising to those of us that knew Taylor. And the story's long and we'll take too much time talking about that. But, Taylor was a super smart guy and incredibly hardworking and really, detail oriented and, incredibly disciplined and, kind of nose to the grindstone and, just super smart and things like that. And when he decided he wanted to switch over, he set his mind to it and started at the lowest level and worked through the trenches. And then, here we are. There's a lot between then and there. I had a closer working relationship with Will because he was on the court with me at my basket every day, with our players. And we spent a ton of social time together too. So the relationship's different, but in Will's case, a lot of attributes, again, also highly intelligent, incredibly personable, can interact with anybody, whether it's, players, older coaches, the bosses, billionaire owners, millionaire sponsors, season ticket holders, whatever circle that he moves in, he has a charisma to him and a nature and a likability, quite frankly, that when you blend that together with some of his physical attributes, which have, served him well on the court, and his intellect and his work ethic, it's created it's created a person who's deserved and earned the opportunity that he just got a week ago.
Yeah. Take us inside what an NBA intern does on a daily basis, just for these people that might want to work in the NBA, whether it's player development, video, all that. Take us inside kind of what an NBA intern is looking to do each day.
Yeah, well, the business has really expanded, obviously. I feel like every year the buildings get bigger, there's more and more positions, and opportunities just seem to continue to just multiply. So that's good news for probably a lot of you guys in this call today. But there's internships all over the place, in the front office, whether it's in analytics or some other scouting type of capacity, basketball operations. And then there's the basketball side of it that I'm closest to, where we hire guys that serve in the video room. So that's the lion's share of the work, to do all the coding and help, all the coaches, do their scout prep and things of that sort, but also serve in an on-court capacity. The buzzword I personally, like to use is, you're a sparring partner. And so every organization has different qualities that they're looking for in the kind of candidates that they select. But what we've looked for a lot, is going back to my time with the Spurs, and of course, what I've done here and been a part of, I should say, here in Milwaukee, is people that can really serve in a physical capacity to help our players, become better. So there's a lot of different boxes you can check as it relates to that.
Yeah. And the part that we've all been waiting for, your time in San Antonio. Obviously, that's when you got there right before George, 1 year before George Hill, or two. What was the time?
Good question. Yeah, I actually think, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I think it was 1 year. I forgot what year we drafted him. I got there in 2007. I think George was drafted in 2008.
Okay. Yeah. So your time in San Antonio, obviously, at that point, he'd already won 3 or 4 NBA championships at that time, Coach Popovich. And so talk about your experience with him, kind of a dream scenario to kind of work under him, work with those assistants and coach 3 Hall of Famers, possibly 4. So talk about your time in San Antonio.
Well, that could probably be a dedicated, 3 or 4 or 5 Zoom calls. I was there 9 years, and there's a lot of people to talk about, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of experiences. But to try to be succinct, it was undoubtedly the, up to that point in my career, the best thing that had happened in my career. It was a incredible privilege, to have an opportunity to work for that organization and to serve Coach Popovich and RC Buford, and Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and a long list of other players. It was very fortunate, and it was a great privilege. And to have 9 years there and have all those experiences, some of the things that stand out to me was to learn, I always said when I was there that, that San Antonio in those days was utopia. From my other NBA experiences, it didn't even compare. It didn't even seem like it was on the same planet or in the same league in terms of just the way things were done there philosophically and the kind of value system that they held, just made it a special place in a different place. But some of my main takeaways was I was fortunate to be surrounded by greatness all the time. I mean, just great humans and great talent, and literally just greatness. I mean, you can talk about Greg Popovich, and we know where the great comes in with Greg Popovich, and we can talk about Tim Duncan, and most of us can easily recognize where the great comes in with Tim Duncan. And you go down the line, and RC doesn't get recognized in the level that he should, because his position, it just isn't quite as public, as the other guys. But he's literally probably the greatest, GM that we've ever known in the modern era. So to be around greatness, and to just watch it and breathe it and feel it and listen to it, you can't always describe it. But you're benefiting from it, and it's a privilege. And so again, this could take up 3 or 4 hours to talk about all those days, but it was a really unique experience, and I couldn't have been luckier to have it.
Yeah. And I've always wanted to ask this. You've worked with and for great coaches, and obviously you've observed 29 other head coaches for all your years in the NBA. What, in the most blunt, simple way, what makes him special? Now, I know he's a fantastic coach, a very generous person. He'll admit it. In the article, he mentioned he would thank Tim Duncan every chance he got. Like, he's had great players, but what makes him special, and what's one thing that you've taken away as a coach yourself that directly from him?
Some of my favorite things about Greg Popovich are I think he's got some of he probably has the highest emotional intelligence that I've been around in coaching. I've never seen anybody like him who understands people and feels people. He can feel your spirit. He can feel the temperature of your blood. He can feel your energy. Again, hard to describe, but he's got an emotional intelligence about the humans around him. It doesn't matter who it is. It's his players, it's his assistant coaches, it's the security, team it's the interns, it's the medical people, it's the janitors in the building, it's secretaries. He's full of empathy. He's as self-aware as anybody I've seen. And he just is so in tune with just the humans around him, and seem to always have this sixth sense, or this just intuitive ability to just always know the right thing to do, the right thing to say, the right thing to do with anybody in any situation. I don't know how you develop that. I don't know how you get that, but he has that. That's my take. That was my experience. And then beyond that, for as great of a basketball coach as he is, everybody wants to talk about basketball mind or basketball geniuses or savants or whatever everybody gets labeled, I thought that Pop obviously knew basketball as much or more as anybody, But to me, beyond what I've already described, he's the best leader that I was ever around. And I've said this to people so many times, and I believe this to my heart. I really believe this. I really mean it. I think he could be the president of the United States. And I really, really do mean that. He's that level of a leader in terms of just as smart as anybody. And again, has the strongest gut and convictions, and is principled and disciplined, and just could lead anything. I don't care if he's the CEO of any corporation in America, or like I said, the president of the United States. His leadership is at the very, ultimate level.
Yeah. And you talk about coaching development. I saw something on Twitter a few weeks ago when so-and-so was hired, about how he's coached or hired basically 1/4 of the NBA, if not more. Is he very proactive, diligent about coaching development and empowering others, empowering his staff, or is it just the nature of the environment itself shapes those coaches? Is it kind of both?
Yeah, I think it's both. You don't, in my judgment, you don't see a proactive process, but I believe that it's something that he's aware of and that matters to him. And I believe that the approach that I observed was he just does it the right way every day. He does what he believes every day, and has a value system, and has a process. And I believe that, it's produced obviously a lot of success. And one of the things that's true is wherever you have an opportunity to be part of great success, whether it's in basketball or in business or anywhere else, success tends to beget more success for you and for others. And so to be a part of anything that produces such consistent high level winning, I don't care if you're a player or a coach or a secretary, your life probably at some point will get better because of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little different question here. Just for example, just everybody on this call works camps in the summer, whether it's their own camps or other schools' camps. My friend Ellis Spar is on here. Ellis Spar worked Purdue's camp for a week. I shouldn't say that on this call. I shouldn't say that school's name, but he worked Purdue camp, and he came down for a day, 2 days, and hung out with me, and I'll be an Ellis Spar fan for the rest of my life. So working those camps is so important. I say that to lead into your current boss, Mike Budenholzer, and how in that same article you sent me, how you met him working Pete Newell big man camp. And whether that story's exaggerated, it's a constant theme everywhere where people get to meet each other. And my friend Cole Teal on this call just worked USA U17 mini camp. I'm sure he met a lot of lifetime friends in that. So talk about the importance of working those camps, meeting those people, and obviously it can lead to. And I doubt you saw, oh, that's Mike Budenholzer. He's gonna be the head coach of the Bucks one day. I want to work for him. Like, it's just natural. Talk about the importance of working those camps, meeting those people, and kind of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, Adam, it's a great question, and the story, is true. It's not a fable. It is true. Specifically, I was down there working, Coach Newell's big man camp in Honolulu for 3 summers when I was a college coach. And that one of the summers, Coach Bud, who's a peer of mine, we're real close in age, and we've both been in the NBA for about exactly the same amount of time, in terms of our careers. But he was down there just sitting in the stands observing the camp. And I think it's because one of the Spurs, he was a video coordinator with the Spurs in those days. I think one of their players was down there working in the camp. I forget that part. So he might have been down just to observe, the player in the camp. And if I am wrong about that, he was just sitting in the stands to at least observe the camp, So we did meet each other that way, even though we weren't even actually working the camp together. I was working the camp. He was watching the camp, so that's that story. But I got lots of other friends that, we worked camps together as well. And, it's a long time ago, but going back to the beginning, yeah, you're not just trying to get, experience coaching people, and you're not just trying to make some money to pay your gas bill or your rent this month. Those obviously are the immediate things, but you really are trying to expand your network and build the strongest relationships you can, whether it's with the coaches at Purdue or Indiana, at those camps, or whether it's with the guys that you're, doing all the cone drills with the 8-year-olds or the 14-year-olds. So again, you never know where relationships begin, and you never know where life will take you in 5 or 25 years. But that's why I say, pay attention to the people that you're sharing experiences with, and don't be an asshole.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend anybody to work Purdue's camp. You can come down to Bloomington anytime you want. But no, I'm just kidding. Are there any questions from the audience? I know I've sucked all the oxygen out of this Zoom so far. If not, I'll call on somebody. But if not, we can just get back into it. But Coach, it's been great so far. Going to Milwaukee now.
Wait, how do we know if someone has questions? Like they gotta raise their hand digitally or something, or what?
Let's get to one.
I don't know how to use Zoom.
Adam, I got a question.
Megan, you got it.
All right, Coach. My name is Megan Black. I've been with the University of Washington on the men's side for the last 5 years.
You're with one of my best friends, Mike Hopkins.
Absolutely.
Mike and I have been really good friends for over 20 years. Talk about relationships.
Yeah, he's incredible. Given me a lot of opportunity and responsibility off the bat, which I'm extremely grateful for. But currently, I've been working for the Minnesota Lynx in their video room for about the past couple months. Throughout your various stops, obviously, you've been here in Seattle before. From high school to college to the NBA, how has your coaching philosophy shifted throughout all that time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that what you find is you're continually learning from everybody that you're with. And the older you get and the more varied and diverse your experiences become, you eventually start to grow into your own, skin, and you evolve, and you start to figure out really actually what you believe. There's a point in time when you don't know anything. So anything you're being taught is all you know. And until you reach that nexus where you've had enough experiences in different places over time, that's when you can start to shed off the things that, really aren't for you. And you start to find, you start to trust, that your experiences have value and that you can stand on your own feet in terms of, yeah, this is what I believe, or this is what I like. You have to always fit things into the truth of your own personality. That's really rule number one, like really what fits you. And as time goes, again, your confidence grows in that. You can become more comfortable. And it's important that you're on that journey of coming to figure out actually what you believe. And, over the course of time as well, undoubtedly, we've all seen that the game evolves. Players impact that, rules changes, impact that. And so there's a lot of things that you have to figure out as you go, what applies or what doesn't. But that's part of evolution.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great
Megan.
question.
And I'm glad she was on because she is Seattle. So she's that Pacific Northwest connection to you. Next question is Jacob Hayslip.
Hey, Coach. My name is Jacob Hayslip, and I just recently finished 7 years as a manager in GA at Western Kentucky University, and I'm starting a new spot at a junior college in Mississippi. And kind of one of the things that I'm most passionate about in coaching is player development and skill development. And I was wondering, in your time as an NBA coach, what is like one skill or technique or concept of the game that you felt you were surprised that players consistently don't have coming into the NBA, that you kind of took for granted that they would have, and that you kind of had it to kind of add and teach on once they got there, that you thought they'd have previously?
That's a great question. And I hesitate to give him my answer because it sounds too obvious and it sounds too simple. I hope no one's holding their breath thinking that I'm going to say something that's profound here, but it blows my mind how many guys come into this league. And we just finished the draft, 2 weeks ago. And so for the month of June, we had so many days where we're bringing in, basically 6 guys a day in pre-draft workouts, getting ready for the draft. And I just am always astounded year after year how many guys can't shoot the basketball. It literally blows my mind. I'm like, what else? What are they doing in college? I'm like, what else is there when you're a college player or a college coach that guys can't get in the gym and get their reps and actually learn how to shoot the ball, or have somebody along the way teach them to shoot the ball correctly? And it just blows my mind how many guys, like, yeah, there's a lot of people these days at all levels, right, that take shots, right? And everyone's out there bombing 3. But how many guys really are not actual shooters and have such, significant problems in their shooting mechanics and things of that sort? That's the one thing that blows my mind. And we've all heard the saying, but it's really true. Like, if you can shoot, you can play. And if people could ever figure out how they could really, really learn how to shoot the ball correctly and well, and repeat it the right way, it's a game changer. So again, not profound, hopefully not a disappointing answer, but that's my answer. And I believe it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Coach. It doesn't surprise me. It's the most utilized skill that gets you on the floor nowadays besides defense.
Thank you, Jake. Ellis Spar, floor is yours.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for your time. I've really enjoyed this so far.
Wait, is this my guy from the Purdue camp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Adam's
I go to
favorite.
USC. I'm a student manager at USC, but I wanted to ask you about working players out, because you alluded to it with coaching Darvin Ham. So could you talk about the balance between like confidence in working someone out your age versus like the arrogant side of it, where this might be me being in my own head, like when I go to work a player out, thinking they might not value my opinion because I'm not a player, or they might think they're above me. Could you talk about your experiences with that?
Yeah, I like that question a lot, because it reminds me of my own experience, at the start of my journey. You have to present yourself to a player in a confident way. But the most important thing that players really, I believe, are looking for is they want to know that you're an authentic person, that you're sincerely interested in them, and that you're really there to serve them, humbly serve them, and that you have nothing but their best interest in your heart, and it's all about them and not about you. And what they have to come to believe is that you're trustworthy, that you're going to be there every single day, anytime they need you, not when it's convenient. They can never, they have to know that they can count on you, that you're reliable and you're going to be there every single day. And as you go through a journey of a season, you're there through all the highs and all the lows, the shooting slumps, as well as, when they're on top of their game, the wins, the losses, all of it. And I think that when they come to recognize that about any of us, that's the most significant thing that builds credibility and builds trust. And if you can capture those 2 pieces, it's been my experience that they'll listen to and take anything that you're giving them. But that also means that you have to know what you're doing. You can't just be on YouTube trying to regurgitate fancy drills that you saw, and you can't spit bullshit at anybody, because players can sniff that out. So you have to be authentic in terms of your approach, and work hard to learn the game, and do all your work to study and be prepared, and come to understand that you have to really know what the player's game is. Like, what does the player you're serving need most today? And it's not like you're trying to, we're not here to turn every player into Kevin Durant. We're not here to turn every player into LeBron James. You have to be there to make a player know that you're working as diligently and with as much devotion to help that player become the best version of himself and to become the best player he can be for today, in hopes that, like, if we do this every single day, that you'll be better in 30 days or in 90 days, and you'll be better by the fall. And eventually enough of day after day of trying to help that player become better for himself within the reality of not only the role that he, has on your team right now, but maybe with a role that he might be able to grow into eventually down the road. You're trying to play that balancing game, and that's how you're trying to serve a player.
Thanks, Coach. I love that answer.
Thank you, Ellis. And Coach, we just had Adam Harrington on last week, former assistant with the Brooklyn Nets, and he talked about how the only thing Kevin Durant cares about at the end of the day is if you can help him get 1% better, he'll take whatever you have for him. He'll take your criticism. He'll take your help. He'll take whatever. Is that kind of a similar thing that you've seen? You've been with Hall of Famers and with Giannis. Players just want you to help them get better. And so at the end of the day, they'll take whatever you give them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And really probably one of the that's a fact, first of all, but one of the most poignant lessons that I ever got to experience when I was in my early days in Seattle with the Sonics. I was probably, I really don't know, but let's say I was 20 or 21 years old, maybe. And I was nobody. And I'm just out on the court, and I'm helping the guys, and I'm working directly under Tim Gergerich's, wing, and with so much reverence for him and so much respect that I just did whatever he told me to do. Never opened my mouth, eyes wide open, ears wide open, mouth always zipped shut. And one night we were getting ready to play a game in the regular season in Seattle, and Nate McMillan was, who's the coach of Atlanta right now, but obviously there's another guy who's now been a 4-time head coach, but he was on the team as a player. And Nate was one of my favorite players ever. I'm a Seattle kid too. And, Nate ended up retiring as Mr. Sonic. And anyway, so it's Nate McMillan. So we're out on the court warming up before the game, and I'm passing the ball to Nate, and Coach Gerg is directing his warm up. And Nate comes off this pin down and curls into the elbow, and I throw some kind of a pass or whatever, and he stops and he asked me a question, and he was real sincere about it, and I kind of froze because my eyes darted over to Coach Gerg, and I didn't want to be I didn't want to get yelled at, I didn't want to speak when I wasn't supposed to speak and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of froze, and I looked at Gerg, I looked back at Nate, and I looked at Gerg again, and I looked back at Nate, and Nate goes, no. He goes, don't look at Gerg. He's like, I'm asking you because you're running the workout, and I trust you, and I believe you, and I want to know what you think. He's like, you got this. And it was a moment for me, like I said, I don't remember how old I was, but it was a moment for me where, again, I told you guys this at the start of the call, like there's lots of people, whether it's players or other people that appear to be, mentors or whatnot, that see some things in us that we can't see in ourselves at a given point in time. And that's something I've never forgotten. It was a moment that was empowering to me. It gave me a lot of confidence, and it didn't mean that I could turn that confidence immediately into different behaviors, but it gave me a lot of confidence. And I've obviously known Nate now for, 25 years, and we have a really good relationship. And every time I see him, I always thank him for that moment. And he obviously doesn't remember it because it was insignificant to him, but I've told him that story, 30 times over the years. And I literally tell him thank you every time I see him, because it was a significant moment for me as a young coach.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Coach. I'm going to get to both Josh and Jordan here in a second, but you mentioned Coach Gerg. tell this audience. Obviously, I know who he is through my dad and just a historic NBA basketball coach, the originator pretty much of the NBA shoot around, the NBA walkthrough, the NBA warm up. Talk about kind of the impact he's had on you and kind of working those workouts with him to where you guys were light years ahead of kind of the rest of the NBA.
Well, he's definitely the godfather of everything that's related to what we all know now. It's all been in place now for the last 20 years. So the day that I was fortunate enough to start as this, lucky college kid, again, I phrase it as an internship now, but again, I told you guys at that point, it wasn't known as that. But the day I was lucky enough to start happened to be Coach Gerg's very first day as an NBA assistant, after having been a career college assistant. At one point in his career, he had been the head coach at Pitt for 5 years, but he'd been a career college assistant beside that, the majority of which was through at UNLV in all the heyday with Coach Tarkanian. And Gerg was one of the most highly respected college assistants in the game, had been for a long time, and had his own legendary status. And if you guys know, or if you don't, dig in and look at the late 80s and the early 90s UNLV teams with Coach Tark, but Coach Gerg was behind all that. So anyway, he comes into the NBA somewhere probably in his early 40s as a very first time NBA assistant. And at that point in time, the idea of the phrase, or even the idea of player development, literally did not exist. There was no such vocabulary anywhere in our sport. You would have been looked at like you were an alien if you'd popped down and started slinging around terms of like player development. No one would even know what you were talking about. You may as well have been talking Chinese. And Coach Gerg, started to just be out on the court, hands-on, sweaty t-shirt, coaching, teaching, hammering fundamentals of footwork and pivoting and leverage and balance and all sorts of things of that sort, and just putting in a ton of physical work. And there's a lot of layers of this story, but one of his earliest, you can call it a project, you can call it a play, whatever you want to call it, but like one of his early experiences happened to be with Gary Payton. You guys can look it up. Their story's probably everywhere about it. But at that point in time also, there were fewer NBA teams. There were, of course, far fewer roster spots. And undoubtedly, there was 50% fewer jobs. They might have had 2 assistant coaches on the bench. There weren't 10 like there are now. There were, there was just nobody. Like the league's totally different now. There were no jobs. And so you go to the game and the players would go out there and they'd, shoot the ball. Maybe the ball boys would be out there throwing the ball back 2 hours before tip off. And then they'd go out and get their layups, 20 minutes before the jump ball. But there was nobody on the court. And NBA assistants, if there was 1 assistant or 2 assistants, they'd go to the arena and get off in their suit and tie and sit there and drink coffee and, wait for the game to start. There's nothing to do. That just wasn't the way Gerg was wired. And he didn't care how it was done or wasn't done. He started going out on the court before the games and working with players. And so you can imagine, fast forward, and everything's different. And now, no matter where you go, college, pro, whatever, there's 100 assistant coaches and there's 100 video coordinators and 100 strength coaches on every team, and everybody's out on the court, and every player seems to have his own personal coach. It feels that way. And everything that I describe literally began with Coach Gerg back in 1992 doing what he does. And before you know it, we have got, quote unquote workout guys on every corner of the world, and YouTube channels and Instagram channels, and player development is the buzzword, and that's all anybody wants to talk about. And like I said, once upon a time, there was no such thing. Tim Gergerich.
It's unbelievable. My dad told me to ask you that question, and it seems foreign to all of us because we know, like when you go to Pacer game against the Nets, you see Kevin Durant working out an hour before. You see Steph Curry doing his thing. So it's fantastic. Every time I go to Vegas, we see him kind of walk around. My dad's like, that's the Godfather. So pretty cool. Definitely wanted to ask you about that. I'm not sure who raised their hand first between Josh and Jordan. I'll give it to Josh because just to rub it in Jordan's face. Josh, it's all you.
Thank you. Hey, Coach. I'm Josh Mandel. I work at University of Washington. I'm the head manager now. Been here for 4 years. Megan passed the torch down to me 2 years ago. She's been great helping my process.
Oh, did we lose him? Josh, can you hear me? There you go.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good now.
I wanted to pick your mind on how you guys manage egos in the NBA and role players and stuff like that, because obviously everybody's the guy in college. And I wanted to see what are some key points that you guys emphasize in helping guys adjust to their roles and finding value in doing the little things such as rim running or spacing the floor if they're at the end of the bench and not getting a lot of burn in their current situation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Josh. Before I try to get to your question, have you gotten to know Bob Medina, your strength coach?
Oh my God, Bobby, he's the GOAT. Love that man.
So he's one of my most significant mentors. And when
Really?
I got started, if you don't know him or know him very well, get to know him better. So when I got started, he was starting as one of the first NBA strength coaches. There weren't strength coaches in the NBA. And so he and Coach Gerg came together from UNLV. He was one of the first strength coaches in NBA history. And he's a significant mentor of mine. And were it not for Bob Medina, who nobody knows who that is except for you, relative to like, hey, Coach Gerg's become a famous coach over his career as an assistant. But Bobby Medina is my man. And he's
the guy.
Massive fingerprints all over my life and my career. So anyhow, let that be said. But he'll tell you all the stories you want to hear about me, and he'll tell you how I was, nobody from nowhere.
I'll ask him tomorrow.
That's my guy. Tell him that we met.
That's awesome.
But anyway, the ego piece, ego matters. We all have to have it, players and coaches. Ego is part of success. And if you don't have that, you can't you can't be as good as you hope to be. So ego tends to be cast in a negative light. But ego is a positive thing. That's a necessary, piece. How you manage ego or convey ego, or how you allow ego to make you behave, is the difference. And what I really think is the case, Josh, is it really starts with who the human being is. And a lot of times that comes down to things like character and, do you have enough humility? Are you a high character person? Do you have empathy for others? Do you love other people? Do you love your teammates? Do you have enough respect to understand that other people can help you get better, or that you don't know it all? And so like all those pieces that make all of us as humans are necessary. And a lot of times the most important thing is identifying those characteristics about the human before you add them to your program. So there's lots of talent out there, whether it's talented coaches, talented managers, talented players, but there's lots of talent out there with really poor character. It goes back to like, don't be an asshole, right? There's a lot of things that fall under that umbrella. And so if you're adding people to your program without having a solid understanding of who they are and how they're wired, you're going to run into a lot of headaches. I don't care if it's again, the other managers you're doing this with, the other GAs, the players you're trying to help, you're gonna have a lot of problems. And so if you can identify the kind of people that you're trying to add to your group, maybe you're going to be in a position someday where you're hiring the student managers, or maybe you're in a position someday where you're going to hire assistant coaches or recruit players or draft players or trade for players or sign free agents. If you're only doing it with little understanding of how they tick and how they're made, and you're only looking at their physical attributes or their talent, you end up finding out that more often than not, those are the kind of people where, the ego gets exercised in the wrong way, and it can become disruptive or destructive, actually. So it's been my experience that if you're working with great people, humans first, that the ego is healthy and effective and gets executed in a constructive way.
Got it. Appreciate it. That was an amazing answer.
Thank you, Josh. And Coach, mentioning strength coaches, mentioning mentors, mentioning family. Talk about your dad. I mean, I feel bad I haven't mentioned him yet. Talk about the impact he had on your life and kind of being the son of a coach and being the son of a strength coach. You had no choice but to be in shape, but talk about his impact on you.
Well, actually, Adam, so my dad wasn't a coach, but my brother actually became a strength coach. So my younger brother is the head strength coach for the Portland Trail Blazers, and he just finished his 12th year with them. But he's had a long career. He was fortunate to be at a number of. He was a college strength coach for a long time. Was able to actually, going back to my relationship with Mike Hopkins. So Mike Hopkins, again, I know some of you guys work for him now, and most of you might know who he is, but if you don't, he's currently the head coach at the University of Washington. But Mike Hopkins and I have been, like I said, really good friends for 25 years. And that goes back to shortly after he finished his college playing career at Syracuse for Coach Boeheim. And then he went on to be ultimately the top assistant at Syracuse, associate head coach, for a long time before taking the University of Washington job. But again, going back to relationships, because of my relationship with Hop, at one point, he didn't even know my brother, but he got to know my brother through me, and he hired my brother at Syracuse to be the head strength coach at Syracuse. So my brother went and coached at Syracuse, was with Carmelo when they won the national championship, Carmelo's freshman year. And my brother spent 5 years with Syracuse and then went on to Kentucky, for 3 years and a number of other places like that. But that's another reference to the power of relationships and things of that sort. But anyway, Adam, so yeah, really the biggest influences on me in terms of just my overall love of basketball and coaching ended up being my high school coach, first and foremost, and then being lucky enough to be mentored by incredible people like Tim Gergerich and Bob Medina, who we just talked about, and a lot of others along the way.
Yeah, no, that's right. I apologize. That's a great story and a great truth. It was your brother, not your father. I apologize. Jordan,
no, you know what? I will throw you one other one, and this might be one that you saw, Adam. Coach Bud's dad was his high school coach and the athletic director and the high school football coach and whatever, like forever. And so it's interesting because a lot of my friends, like Coach Bud. I spent a long time coaching with Brett Brown in San Antonio. His father was his high school coach and then was a college head coach and things like that. I've been around a lot of guys like that who are very good friends that were able to grow up that way. And it's interesting to me because sometimes I feel a little bit like an outsider in that regard, because I have a lot of friends who's either their dads were their high school coaches or were coaches themselves, or JB Bickerstaff. I worked for him obviously in Memphis, and he grew up the son of an NBA head coach multiple times, and his dad also became a general manager. So it's interesting to see a lot of that kind of stuff over my journey, but that wasn't my experience, but a lot of friends have had it that way.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I always joke. My dad, I believe he's still on this call. He was my high school coach, and I'm very thankful he gave me a jersey. Didn't coach me for 1 day or 1 second, but I was on his team, and so I'm very thankful for that. But he's always been a parent, not necessarily a coach. I wasn't good enough. But Jordan Jacobson was a great former manager at Michigan. Now he's a great graduate assistant at the University of Florida, and I'll give him the floor.
Appreciate the warm welcome, Adam. My question, I think it might kind of go back to what some of the previous questions were, but I mean, like Adam said, I've been a couple of different places now, work for a couple of different coaches, and there's always different like common threads. Like some teams have had more success than others. In the teams that you've been around, what have been some of like those common threads that you think lead to success, that something that like maybe a successful team might have, whether it's culturally, like talent wise? Obviously all good teams that achieve at a high level got to have some talent, but is there like some sort of common thread or common theme that you see like with whatever teams maybe overachieve for their ceiling relative to the ones that don't live up to their potential?
Yeah, I would say that for my career, I've been super lucky to just have had so many opportunities to be part of really talented teams. I've had a couple of experiences where, we weren't talented or we were way too young, and a lot of other things. So you lose a lot, but in all the successful situations, the two things that I've seen is a lot of talent, enough experience, where that talent, that, the nexus of talent and experience meets, at the right moment to be able to help you be good enough. And then the other thing I would say is again, going back to the groups of guys that have enough, care for each other, enough love for each other, enough respect for each other, where they have come to realize that no matter how good they are, they really actually need each other to, get to the level they all really hope to get to. So that togetherness is really probably my main word, the togetherness. How you play the game together on both ends of the floor. It's not just offense and moving the ball to each other and not being selfish and sacrificing, but the same thing defensively, doing it together and not being selfish, defensively, and knowing that if we don't do all this together, the talent doesn't matter. And so a lot of times, again, it's going to come back to the collective character of the group. Who are these human beings? Yeah, we all know you have to have enough talent or good luck, right? But you still also have to have the right character and the right ultimate spirit and togetherness, with that group. And I would say that you can have a group that's maybe less talented than somebody else, but if they compete at a high level and they do it together and they do it for each other, they may not be able to go all the way to the mountaintop, but they can go further than they should. I've seen that for sure.
Great.
Thank you, Jordan. We will go to Alex. Alex, you have the floor.
Hey, Coach. So my name is Alex Butenhoff, and I'm a student manager at the University of Northern Iowa. So my question for you is, so obviously, every team wants to win a championship, and that's like the big goal. What are some of the smaller goals that you and the other coaches on staff really preach to your guys? And did you see that shift from organization to organization throughout your career?
Yeah. The things that we've always tried to say from day one, and I really learned this in my time in San Antonio with Coach Pop. We never started off a season really proclaiming that we were setting out to win a championship. And the things that I've seen that I've come to believe in is, if your quest from day one is to get better every day, and not only get better as an individual, but get better collectively as a team, if that's what your literal mission is day after day. And your ultimate goal is to become as good as you can become, and steadily grow over the course of a season. And by following that process, trust that at the end of the year, you're going to give yourself a chance to maybe be in a position to win a championship. And I've experienced this, and I've seen coaches like Coach Budenholzer here. We obviously won the championship last year. And he was a part of 4 championships as an assistant coach in San Antonio. And, we talk about all the time, and in my years around Coach Pop, you start off at the beginning of a season, and no matter how good your team might be, even if you know that you might actually be a contender, you have no idea if you can or will win a championship. You never know. And even as the playoffs are going, I think I actually saw a soundbite or read a quote from Steve Kerr a couple of weeks ago. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had said at the beginning of early in the playoffs, I think he was telling their general manager, I don't know if we're good enough to do it this year. And, but you just never know how it goes. And so the name of the game ends up being, again, compete, do it together, be proud about working day in and day out to get better. Let that be your personal goal. I'm getting better individually. We're going to get better as a team. We'll win some, we'll lose some, we'll play well, we won't play well. I'll have a good game. I won't, I'll have a bad stretch, but we're going to keep working at it. We're going to be in the gym. We're going to be on the film. We're going to be challenging each other. We're going to figure it out. And as we do this collectively, that process, day in and day out over the course of your season, hopefully, again, going back to the fact, if you're talented enough and if you're together enough, and of course, if you're healthy enough, a lot of times will lead you to a place of being in a position where you actually have a shot at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. I'm excited to watch you guys play, and I'm excited to see what AJ brings to your guys' team.
We're excited to have him.
Thank you, Alex. Coach, got 2 more questions for you. We'll see if the audience is good, and then we'll get you out of here. Thanks for being so gracious with your time. A day in the life of Chad Forcier during the season. Obviously, you're on the road a lot. You're 41 games on the road plus playoffs. You guys have been very successful. So you're playing 100 games a year minimum. Take us inside a day for you. What percentage is video? What percentage is on the floor? What percentage is staff meetings and coaches meetings? Then also, you're in Philadelphia for the weekend for a game. You walk around to the city. You're on the phone with your family. What's kind of a day look like for you during the season?
Well, the days are not necessarily very rigid because a lot of it can be dictated on what happened the day before. So, for example, if we played last night at home, or if we played last night on the road and we just got back at, 2 or 3 in the morning. So each day can take on a life of its own, again, relative to what are the wise scheduling decisions that are born out of what just happened today or tonight. What time is it, right? But if I was going to go in to work tomorrow at home during the regular season, and we're off today, we're home, whether we did or didn't have practice, no game. A lot of us end up being in the office. I happen to work for somebody who isn't going to, slam office hours down and demand and do all these other kind of things. But we typically, our team practices at noon every day. So if you work backwards from that, what we tend to do is about an hour and 20 minutes before the team actually starts on the floor at noon, we have our everyday, player development program, our individual workouts. And it's something that we call our daily vitamins. So it's our individual workouts, players and coaches, and everybody's slotted in their time slot every day. And so those will start for a noon practice. Those will start at 10:40. And so working back even further yet, if that's the case, then again, and this isn't rigid, but the way Coach Bud does it here, there's a lot of days when we'll have a coaches meeting, maybe 9:30. And That doesn't mean that the coaches meeting will take a full hour. Sometimes it takes, 30 minutes and we're finished. And sometimes we need to be in there for, an hour and a half. It just depends on the day. But so, sometime before getting ready for a coaches meeting that might be at 9:30 or 9, somewhere in there, we're in the office. You might be, if you're an early guy and that's your routine and your rhythm, maybe you're in there at 7, and maybe you don't get in until 8 or 8:30. And then it's also with regards to like who you are. Like some of us have kids and you're taking kids to school and you got to get through traffic and get to work. And some coaches are younger and they don't have kids, and they want to come and run on the treadmill at 7 a.m. and then watch their film. So there's a lot of kind of creative or poetic license in there in terms of how you manage your life, prior to showing up for the first real scheduled thing, which is going to be your coaches meeting that the head coach is going to call. And again, we don't do things on that level. It's not rigid every day. It's not like every day we're going to have a coaches meeting at 9 a.m. just be there. It's fluid, again, going back to whatever happened yesterday. So that's kind of that. And then once you get to the team practice, most of the time, once you get out of training camp, an NBA practice typically isn't going to last any longer than about an hour. And that's not counting if you're going to have, time in the theater, having a film session. You're probably not going to be on the wood as an entire team for really any more than about an hour once you get going, through the season. And then when the team practice ends, let's say we started it at noon, we didn't happen to have film, so we just went straight to the court. We're finished by 1 on a day-to-day, regular season rhythm. You're going to have a group of guys that may get some extra shots afterwards. And so that you probably tack on another 15 to 20 minutes of that. And that's pretty much it as it relates to, what you're doing in the gym. The rest of your day, it's on you. You're watching your films, you're preparing your game plans for whoever you're scouting. You're maybe preparing an edit because you've got your individual players you're responsible for. Maybe you've got a player in your office and you're going through, whatever, 15 clips you want to show him. Maybe it's all of his minutes from the last 2 games he played, whatever it may be, things of that sort. And then, similar idea, leave when you need to leave. It's not like we have to be there until 4 or 5 o'clock or, Coach Bud is telling us what our office hours are. You got to go to the dentist, you go to the dentist. If you got to pick up your kids from school at 2:30 in the afternoon, you pick your kids up from school. If you're single and you have nothing else to do in your life, you may hit the treadmill again or stay there till 6 o'clock at night. So again, you can see it's pretty individualized in terms of a lot of things like that. And really probably in many cases different than some college situations. I know some college coaches approach managing their staff in a different way and what a work day looks like. So it can be different. But again, that's also has a lot to do with who you're working for, the NBA. There's different guys. And that's the way that it's been in most of the cases that I've been in. And then Adam, you talk about the road. The road's really different because you're not all together at one building or in an office space. So you got your hotel rooms, that becomes your office on the road. And, you have a coaches meeting and go to a shoot around and, you have free time. You get into the city the night before a game and you go to dinner with another coach, or you stay in your room and get room service, or you go see your college roommate who happens to live in Philadelphia. You have free time and you want to go see the Liberty Bell, you take a walk. If that's not your thing, you stay in and you just watch film all day. Like, again, there's a lot of kind of freedom to how you approach it. And again, that can also go with workflow. Like if it's my game tonight in Philadelphia, I'm probably really under the gun. Or if it's my game tomorrow night in New York, I probably have a lot going. But if I just, finished the game last night in Brooklyn and I don't have another scout for 10 days in Miami, I might have time to go take a walk and go see the Rocky statue.
Yeah, that's a must. My last question is, when you're looking for self-improvement, self-growth, it might not be a lot of time in the season, but now before summer league and August when stuff slowed down, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching? Just when you're trying to do pure personal development, personal growth, what are some of your go-tos?
Yeah, a lot of different things. In fact, let me get up for a second. I'm going to show you something I'm reading right now. Because here's an example. I don't know if you guys can see this, but here's an interesting one. I got about, I don't know, I've probably got 15 pages left. I'll finish it today. Short read. You can see I'm pretty good with the skinny books. I can't read those big ones like Gone with the Wind. I'm not smart enough. But can you guys see this?
Oh yeah. Yes, sir.
So I'm reading this right now. If you guys want to write it down, there might be some value, but this author, if you can't see it, is Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Varty, V-A-R-T-Y. Anyway, interesting book. I won't bother telling you what it's about, but it's something that I think has value, you know, just a life in general. And for all of us trying to find our way, trying to find our path or our track. It's largely a metaphor, through the eyes of someone's, you know, real life as someone who's been a guide, a safari guide in Africa for a long time. So it gets, you know, it's a metaphor, you know, that's got a lot of value. But anyway, so yeah, sometimes you're reading books, and then really the only other, I'll give you two more examples. During the pandemic, going back to Mike Hopkins again, it's funny we keep bringing him up, but Mike Hopkins and I probably spent, I would say, close to about 30 hours during the pandemic on Zoom like this, one-on-one, sitting in each other's kitchens, talking to each other's, you know, wives or whatever, you know, going back and forth in the kitchen while they're cooking dinner. And we literally watched film together. You know, I was diving into trying to understand everything I could that he ever knew about zone from all his years with Coach Boeheim and from how he uses it at Washington, how he's changed it. And he wanted to know everything about Milwaukee Bucks offense. And, you know, so we spent probably about 30 hours during the pandemic, one-on-one on Zoom like this, sharing video, screen sharing video, you know, stop, rewind, ask questions, take notes. So that was a big avenue for me. And then the last one, in terms of what I'm doing now, is I've tried to dig in to study in some of the teams in Europe, just to kind of see if I can steal or identify any ideas about the way that they play the game or things that they do. You know, different out of bounds sets or series, you know, you name it. So I've spent some time on that too.
Awesome. I'm going to give all the credit for the home design to your girlfriend. Is this true? Or is that all you?
No, that's all Cassandra. She's the one that makes it a nice place to come home every night.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. If there's no more questions from the audience, I'll obviously give them a second. But thank you so much for everybody for being on. It's awesome that Megan and her teammate could be on here because your relationship with Coach Hopkins and then obviously Coach Mannix, you guys go far, far back. So thanks so much, Coach. And we're rooting for you. I mean, we're when do you leave for Vegas for the summer league? You're gonna be there?
I'm actually going to go down there on Saturday. So our team took off yesterday and has their first game tomorrow. So I'll miss the first one. I'll probably watch it on TV, I guess. But I'll get down to Vegas on Saturday, and I'm going to catch a couple of their games, and then I'm going to leave before summer league ends, and I'm going to go down to LA to spend time working with Drew Holiday and Pat Connaughton. So start taking care of our veteran guys.
Awesome. It never stops, but we're rooting for the Bucks this summer league. So you got fans in us, and thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it.
It's a privilege. I appreciate you inviting me, Adam, and thank you to everybody for spending time today. And hopefully I gave you something you can walk away with that might resonate a little bit. But I'm humbled to have been you know, somebody that could share some time with you.
Of course. And I remember one more thing. Your book was called The Lion Tracker, and obviously lions and exotic
Lion Tracker's Guide to Life.
You need to check in with our man George, because I think he owns like 20 lions now. Have you seen his?
Well, I was on FaceTime with George Hill about 4 hours ago. He's on vacation in Mexico, and I was on the phone with him because I was trying to find out where we were going to work again. And he said he's actually gonna pop into, I thought I was gonna go work him out in San Antonio. That's where he lives in the off season. But he said he's gonna come back from Mexico vacation. He's gonna pop into Indianapolis for a couple of days. He's got some kind of an event there. And then he's gonna come to Milwaukee for a few days and work with me for 3 or 4 days here. So I did touch base with him. But yeah, George has been on a number of safaris himself. He's like the Tiger King.
Yeah, he's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Coach, and we'll be rooting for you, and can't thank you enough.
Thanks for your time, everybody. Good luck.
See you soon, Coach. Thank you.